There was a wealthy farmer who owned a lot of land in Ohio. He built a new barn on his property every time his wife had a baby. He named the barns after each of his children, and by the time this story takes place, they had 6 kids and were expecting number 7. However, the farmer's wife died in childbirth, and so did her unborn baby. The farmer went insane with grief and couldn't tend to his farm. The family had no money and the farm started going under. They say that one night, in the depths of his madness and despair, the farmer took an axe and led his children out to the barns where he murdered them, one by one. He buried each of their bodies in the 6 barns that had been named after them. Then, the farmer went to the 7th barn where he hung himself. As the story goes, all of the barns were eventually torn down and the land was sold off. All except for the 7th barn. Nobody wanted to buy the land because of what had happened there. So it was abandoned and soon fell into disrepair. They say, if you go to that barn at night, you can see the ghost of the farmer hanging from the rafters. His body swinging back and forth in the wind, dwelling on his terrible crime for all eternity. No one was ever really sure where the 7th barn was located, although it was definitely in Ohio. Some said it was the Kranz farm in Cuyahoga Valley, and others said it was at Top of the World in Northampton. In 1997, a local Ohio teacher claimed that, after a lot of research, he had finally managed to track down the real location of the infamous 7th barn. He said that none of the barns had ever actually been torn down. The land had just been divided up and sold off, and the barns had simply been incorporated into neighboring farms. According to the teacher, he was able to pinpoint the correct location because all of the barns on neighboring properties had nameplates above their doors with the names of the children engraved on them. The teacher and his son set out at night to visit the barn, bringing a video camera with them in the hopes of capturing some paranormal activity. The next morning, the teacher's wife reported her husband and son missing. Police found their abandoned car by the roadside. While searching the area, they entered a barn in a nearby field and found the dead bodies of the teacher and his son hanging from the rafters.
I felt my eyelids getting heavy. The long stretch of road had an almost sedating effect on me. I had the heaters on, which was lulling me into a false sense of security, the kind you get when you're snuggled under a duvet on a cold, wintry night. It's a long road. It wouldn't hurt to close my eyes for a second, I thought as I began drifting into a sleepy slumber. That's when the car hit a speed bump, sending the car swerving to the other side of the road. That was a bloody close one, I thought to myself. I knew if I didn't find a place to pull in, I was going to kill someone. I drove up to the road. As I was driving, I noticed someone walking in the middle of the road towards me. They had their hand outstretched in the direction they were going. As I got closer, I could see it was a woman. She was clearly in distress and appeared to have been in an accident. I slowed the car down to a snail's pace. "You're going to get hit by a car if you keep walking in the middle of the road," I shout out. "I can help you. What happened to you?" I asked as she kept walking with her arms still outstretched. The woman had a massive gash on her forehead. Blood was pouring down her face. She was completely out of it. First, I thought she was on drugs. She just kept on walking, not even acknowledging me. "Were you in an accident?" I shouted in the hope of getting her attention. I kept following the direction she was going in the hope she would tell me what had happened to her. That's when I noticed the baby blanket. "Were you in an accident with your baby?" I asked as I became overwhelmed with concern. As she walked, she turned her head to look at me. She was trying to say something, but blood was just bubbling from her mouth. We kept walking for about 5 minutes. As we made our way up to the road, I noticed something lying on the ground. As I got closer, I could see it was a person. I went in for a closer inspection, when to my horror, I discovered it was the same woman that led me here. She had the same gash on her forehead and was holding the same baby blanket. And when I looked up from the body, the woman that led me here was gone. That's when I heard the cries of a baby in front of me. Her poor baby, I thought, as I heard him screaming from the ditch. I grabbed the baby blanket and ran over to the ditch. I grabbed the child and carefully wrapped him in his blanket. He seemed unharmed, apart from the distress he must have been in. I made my way back to my car to get my cell phone and ring for help. As I got to my car, I noticed the front of it was all banged up, as if it had hit something. Blood was smeared across the dented metal. I put the baby in the safety of the back seat as I grabbed my cell phone and dialed 911. My heart was racing as I waited for the operator to answer. 911, what's your emergency? Hello, yes? I think I killed someone.
"Welcome to Subway," I'd always say, in my friendliest voice, flashing my fakest smile. I've practically been wasting away in a Subway in northern Nebraska for the last 2 years, working 9 to 5, making a whopping $9.62 an hour. My part-time position soon turned permanent after my divorce was finalized. She just decided one day she wasn't happy, and it resulted in her taking everything and leaving. I haven't heard from her since. No one has. I suppose I shouldn't bore you with my origins, though. That's not why you're here. That's not why I'm sharing this. You see, this all started with my manager's pestering. He said he wants to emphasize the company's open-mindedness to new creations. Hell, he even went as far as stealing other restaurant slogans, hanging handmade signs outside saying, "You can have it your way at Subway." We all pondered around the subject of his sudden enthusiasm for store promotion. Midlife crisis, divorce, corporate pressure. Whatever the reason, he was crazy about the topic, and he was driving us crazy talking about it. Eventually, though, I was irritated enough one night to step up to the plate after hearing one of his many lectures on creativity. I introduced it as the senatorial sub. I told him it was an idea I came up with after Molly left, and it was. She just had more involvement in its creation than he'll ever know. It was a mundane sub, really lettuce, cheese, tomato, but it wasn't your typical beef in it. He was hesitant as the words left my mouth, but I reassured him by saying I raise cattle, and I would supply it free of charge. And from that moment on, he was in. I'm sure you already know the story. I'm sure my face is being blasted all over the news. I'm sure you're calling me a sick bastard. But from that moment on, I had a moment of clarity. This gave me a purpose. And as the customers flooded in and complimented my work, my purpose only flourished into a duty. I obsessed over my cooking. For once, something I did was good. For the first time in those 2 years, I felt important. Special. A key member, and no one could take that away. My schedule ran like clockwork. Once a week, I would get the meat, put it on ice until morning, and then take it into work. From there, I would wash it, heat it, and prep it for the day. No one questioned it, and I liked it that way. But today was different. Today, my coworker, Abby, showed up early, leaving me unable to refill the stock for a new demanded item. By the time I had a chance to go back out to my car, the meat was already tainted, but I guess that's what I get for leaving it in the sun. So I watched as our supply ran slim. We sold our last senatorial sub to an elderly lady, and we were forced to turn away customers who desperately asked for our new item. And as soon as Abby told me she was going on lunch, I knew what I had to do, as I stared at the customer eating the remnants of our supply. "Hey, did that lady leave while I was on lunch?" "Her food's still there," Abby asked, pointing at the empty table with food still on it. "I think so. I think someone picked her up out front. Hey, did you see the new sign for Moe's out there?" I replied, in an attempt to divert the topic. By then, alarm bells rang in my head and I didn't clean up all the evidence. It wasn't enough time. She came back from lunch early. I was lucky enough to wipe the knife clean. "I was just out there. I didn't see anyone leave," Abby said. "I'm gonna go check the bathrooms." As soon as I heard the bathroom door closed, I grabbed my coat and sprinted out the door. As I opened it to leave, I opened it to the rest of my life, and I knew that as soon as I stepped outside, I'd be a wanted man. Because it's only a matter of time until they find that woman's body in the freezer.